it's Mark Smith here again for Baldwins. We're going to look at some medals, but we're going to look at the paperwork behind the medals today. I get asked a lot of questions about how can I find what Grandad did in the war. And one of the problems that we've got is that most of the papers that would tell us what Grandad did in the war, in the First World War that is, were destroyed during the Blitz in World War II. Now the papers that were lost were the soldiers' service papers. All of those men and women who'd fought in the trenches in the First World War, the story of what they'd done was in those papers. But when that bomb landed on that building on the 8th of September 1940, 60% of those papers were just vaporised. And the only thing that we have left, which is the best and most complete record that we've got of those people who served overseas during the First World War, are what are called the medal index cards. Now, when we sell medals here at Baldwins, at the end of the description, we often say copy medal index card sold with the medals, because not only is it the only really record that we've got, but it also is a record that gives you quite a lot of information. It's not the sort of information that necessarily will tell you what battle he was in or where he was, but it might do. And what the other problem that I have is that a lot of people say to me, so Grandad was born in 1890 in Hackney. Can you find him? And the answer is no. The army are not interested in necessarily where you were born or how old you were, and only on their service papers was that information recorded. The problem that we've got is that the most complete record are actually just work dockets. What they are cards which were given to a man who was going to engrave the medals with details. So where he was born, where he came from, not recorded, because that's not what was needed on the medal. What was needed on the medal was his number, his rank, his initials, his surname, and the regiment that he served in. And that's it. So once we move outside of those sparse details, we're going to have a real problem finding an ancestor, because the things that most people know about them, where they were born, when they were born, are not recorded on these because they're not needed. And a lot of people miss that point, that these are not historical documents about Grandad or Nan, but what they are historical documents of a man who had to engrave someone's medals. They are just work dockets. But they can tell us some quite exciting things. So this one here is for a man called William Henry Wilson. Now what we can start to tell from the card is that we have his service number over here, so L7439, his rank as a private, and Royal West Kent Regiment. But we are lucky on this because they have actually put a 1, which means the 1st Battalion, the Royal West Kent Regiment. So all of a sudden, we've got more information about this man than we might have thought we might get. What we now know is that he landed in France on the 15th of August, 1914. So he's one of the very first men to go out to France after war was declared on the 4th of August. From his card, what we can tell is that he was awarded the 1914 Star, the British War Medal, and the Victory Medal. So we know that he got the 3 standard medals of the First World War. Pip, Squeak and Wilfrid. If you remember one of our other talks about the medals of the First World War, you will remember Pip, Squeak and Wilfrid. Now what our card also tells us is that he received the clasp. So he was one of those men who were given the little clasp that says the 5th of August to the 22nd of November 1914. And that was really given to the men who had come under gunfire during that period, and certainly during the first Battle of Mons and the first Battle of Ypres. What we can also see from this man's card is that up here in the remarks it says killed in action the 23rd of August 1914. So poor William was there from the 15th of August until the 23rd, which is the first day and the start of real fighting in the war, the Battle of Mons, and William was killed that day. So his war lasted just about a week. But we've got all of that from our card. Now we know that he was killed in action on the 23rd and he's in the 1st Royal West Kent Regiment. We can now go off to other sources, the War Diary, and find out where he was and what he was doing. So from this card, we're now building a picture of this man. The second card we've got here is for a man who went out to France, as you can see, on the 27th of July 1915. He was a man called John Rains. He was in the Royal Field Artillery. He was an acting sergeant. The card also tells us that he was discharged, and over here in different coloured ink, the inks do matter what colour they are. This says Silver War Badge and then the number of the register. Now the Silver War Badge is given to those men who were wounded or were ill during the war and could no longer be in the army, the navy or the air force and had to go back to civilian life. But remember, your country needs you, and there was an underlying current of particularly ladies who would stop men who weren't in uniform in the street and give them white feathers for cowardice. And this little Silver War Badge, which is a little round silver badge they wore on their lapel, showed that they had served and had been discharged honourably by being wounded or being too ill to continue. We can see that John was discharged. He has his Silver War Badge, but bless him, we also see here on his card that it says those magic 2 letters, the Victoria Cross. And John Rains was awarded the Victoria Cross in 1915 for an action at a place called Fosse 7 near Bethune in France. But he was so badly gassed and wounded during that he could no longer serve and was discharged from the army. So just from that card, we're beginning to build a picture of this one man. Now, as the war progressed, not all of the 3 medals were given out, Pipsqueak and Wilfrid, the 1914 Star, British War Medal and Victory, or the 1415 Star, British War and Victory. But eventually men were just being awarded the pair, as we remember, Mutt and Jeff from our earlier video. And this card here is to a man who did only receive the Victory and the British War Medal. And you can see them marked here on the card. Now, the little asterisks here are telling the man what to put on the medal. He was a Lance Corporal, but when he landed in France, he was only a private, and that is what must go on the medal. So it is a card that is telling someone how to inscribe the medal. This card here is to a man called Arnold Ridley. You know Arnold, because most of us will know Arnold Ridley as Private Godfrey from Dad's Army. But he really did serve in the First World War, and he was so badly wounded that if you watch him on television, you can see that his left arm doesn't really work and his left leg as well. And Ian Lavender said in a programme once that they always had to look after him because he was so badly injured, even 50 years after the war, that he still suffered. And you can see here that he was transferred to the Army Reserve due to wounds. So again, we're building up a story of a man just from the medal card. Another man here who only received the 2 medals, the British War and the Victory, which means that they went out to France and Flanders and other areas of conflict during the First World War after the 1st of January 1916. But this card is to John RH Christie, John Reginald Hawley Christie, known to most of us, I'm afraid, as the Rillington Place murderer from the 1950s. And whilst we now have that he was in the Notts and Derby Regiment, he was a private, there's his number, he did receive 2 medals for the First World War. We have this curious marking here, 11th of May 53. I don't know why it says the 11th of May 53, but it's curious because it links it to the actual trial and the execution of Christie as a murderer. So something different from a card, but still more information that we're gaining. And if we had those medals, you know, we would have something really quite unusual to a murderer, unusual card. This one here is a card which shows us that William Buchanan went to France on the 22nd of November 1915. It says France here. It says that he was awarded the 1915 Star, the British War and the Victory Medal. He was a corporal in the 16th Battalion of the Northumberland Fusiliers. And again, it says here, killed in action. So now we can move on from that and go to the Commonwealth War Graves and find out what happened to William Buchanan. And William was killed in that most famous attack on the 1st of July 1916 on the Somme, the first day of the Battle of the Somme. And William is one of the 18,311 men who were killed pretty much in the first hour or 2 hours of the battle. So there again, what we've managed to do with this card is put him in time, in space. We've now got him on the battlefield. So these cards can be very useful in taking us forward for finding out what happened to an ancestor. The last one we're going to look at is this one here. This is just a victory medal that we've got here, and on it it says Private Bateman, King's Royal Rifle Corps. That's fine, that's fair enough. When you look up his card, he's WR Bateman, and there he is, King's Royal Rifle Corps, Lance Corporal 6814, and indeed 6814 is the number on the medal. However, underneath it he has transferred to the Royal Army Medical Corps as now a sergeant, and he's 83622. And when you look up 83622 Bateman, not 6814 Bateman, but now our new number with a new regiment, we find that William was very badly wounded in 1915 with the King's Royal Rifle Corps. He transferred to the Royal Army Medical Corps, and he died in 1918 of those wounds that he received 3 years before. No mention of this on his card, just the fact that his medals were awarded by the Royal Army Medical Corps and he got 3. Only 1 now remains, but without the card we would never have known what happened to 6814 Bateman, who eventually finished the war as 83622 Bateman. So these cards are very useful in giving us those clues of things to look for. They don't give you date of birth, they don't give you where he lived. We have to have a number and hopefully a regiment, and then we can begin to narrow it down to find our man, because after all that's what this is all about. It's about remembering these people and what they did. The medal index cards are the best source of information that we have, with the loss of all of those service papers, but they are our starting point. They're always our starting point. And they should always be where you go to find out what your man or woman had done in the First World War.